Hello, everybody. I'm really excited to welcome you all to another Skills4All seminar that we will start in 2 minutes, just waiting everybody to join us. So, as you all are familiar with our concept for our season 24-25, we run 7 different Skills4All webinars, and today we will be talking about the officiating, game officiating, and IIHF initiatives what are happening during this season. So every hour webinar is structured in a way that it takes about 50 to 75 minutes. And first we start with a bit of introduction and housekeeping. Then we move to the main topic, and then we'll talk about some IHF initiatives connected to that topic. And then on the end, for everybody who is joining us via Zoom, they are able to stay and have a discussion and question and answers for our speakers. So as always, we are really happy to see that there is a lot of people joining us via YouTube as well, through YouTube. And those people are able to watch the presentations. And then once we start the discussion, we will stop the YouTube stream. So if you wanna continue with us and have the discussions, or at least listen to discussions, then on our webpage you can find the link as well for the Zoom connection. So today I'm really happy to present our IHF consultant, Lee, and Joel, who is our officiating development manager, who actually had this project going on last year and this year, talking about the decision making in game officials, how do game officials make decision, and they will discuss today about vision project, which is connected to the eye tracking as well as quality improvements of our officials. So I don't wanna keep you waiting too long. I'm really excited about the video that they made and about the talk that they had and what they were doing for the last year. So I'm happy to give it over to Joe and to Lee to show you and to present to you the work they did or they are doing.
Hello there, my name is Lee Waters and I'm here to talk about the amazing things that we have been doing here in the Sports Vision project, where we have been using eye tracking technology to fully understand what ice hockey officials do on the ice when making their decisions from an eyesight and vision perspective. The aim of this presentation is to give an overview of what we've been doing, so to give you some intricacies as to what's been going on, but also to explore some key basics of theory that this project has been based on, outline the approach, so how we have tackled this really, really complex process, and also highlight the key findings from the project, and then key part of this is to understand what the applications are, because we can do all that we want from a theoretical basis or from a project basis, but if it doesn't actually come together from an application, training, development perspective, then we're going to struggle to sell that. So here goes, and I hope you enjoy. So before we get into the intricacies of the project and the theoretical basis and applications, I thought I'd just introduce who I actually am. So, like I've said, I'm Lee Waters, and I've got a background of about 15 to 20 years of education, sport, application, and coaching perspectives in a variety of different sports, from ice hockey to rugby, to football, to athletics, water polo, variety of sports. Being perfectly honest, I was an anti-academic. So when I was younger, I didn't actually enjoy all that much with education. What I struggled with was the application of what was being discussed in the classroom. That wasn't always clear to me, and I struggled with that aspect. So a key part of my practice is trying to make sure that everything that we do is as applied as possible. So not just talking about the application aspects, but also talking about how the theory matches with the application and how it can be used in the real world. So before, once again, we go into things, here's a video of what we've been up to so far. So as you can see from that video, we've been up to some pretty amazing things, and I will share what this actually means in a few seconds. But what's been going on is that we've worked across 3 tournaments. So Basel under-18s in 2023, Gothenburg 2024 under-20s, and under-18s Finland 2024. Covered 19 games, 27 officials, and we've used Tobii 2 and Tobii 3 eye trackers, which here's a set now. So the Tobii 3 eye tracker is just here. So officials have been wearing these on the ice for us to be able to understand what they do on the ice from a vision perspective when they make their decisions. So what is decision making? Decision making is the most important cognitive process we go through. It has serious ramifications as to whether we are successful or not. We make thousands of them every day. Just think about how many you've already made today. You are literally making one now as to whether to carry on listening to me or not. So with that though, there are key elements to decision making. So what are they? It's a complex process which involves a selection of an action or series of actions based on the environment that we are in. So in other words, we need to understand the environment that we are in, have an understanding of what we can do to influence that situation, and then select an action based on those pieces of information. But with that, though, there are a key pieces of information and processes that are part of that cycle. One of them is the eyes, or our vision. So our eyes are important because they take in the information that we need to make our decisions. Upwards of 80 to 90% of that information comes through our visual system. So it seems only right that we do place a lot of focus, or a lot more focus, on the visual system to understand what people are doing with that to make their decisions. We also then need to understand the next level of that, which is gaze behavior. So our gaze behavior is our our movement of our eyes, going left, right, up, down, our fixations, so things that we focus on specifically, and then also what we then find interesting, so our areas of interest. Another level with regards to decision making is our memory or knowledge. So what have we done in our previous experiences, and what have we stored in our brains in order to make these decisions? And then the other level of this is our emotions. Our emotions have some significant impacts on our decision making ability, and we'll go into that in a second. So I've highlighted that the eyes are important in decision making, but why are they important? So let's start to go into that. The eyes have 6 skeletal muscles on each one. Now these help our eyes move left, right, up, down, and they are helping us being able to get from place to place, from areas of focus, as quickly as possible. Now I'll reiterate that it is only skeletal muscle around our eyes. So that means it does get fatigued. That means it can be trained. That means that it is an area that also needs to be suitably warmed up and cooled down. Now just think about what I've just said. It's an area that needs to be warmed up and suitably cooled down, and it can be trained, and it can get fatigued. How much work do you do on your eyes? The other element of this is to think about the 2 different types of vision that we have, which one of them is called the ventral stream, which is that we are effectively picking up patterns within our environments. The other is the dorsal stream, which means that we are then using that information to visually guide our movement. Now, from an officiating perspective, we are typically focusing on the ventral stream, because think about it from a perspective from that perspective, is that officials are actually sorting out patterns of play as they go through. So that's the area, that's the stream that we are going to be focusing on in this regard. Now, there are a variety of different visual skills that we need to take into consideration in regards to this project. And one of them is dynamic visual acuity. That's a fancy way of saying that, can you see things on the move? Or can you see things when they are moving quickly? Now, ice hockey, as we well know, is the fastest team sport that there is. There's no comparison. So an important part of being an official is you being able to see clearly whilst on the move, or being able to see clearly when players are on the move too. So we need to analyze that and have a look at how good people are at this skill. Another skill would be focusing. Are you able to focus on the right piece of information at the right time to be able to get that information and make the right decision? How good is your depth perception, your ability to judge distances in effect? So can you go through that process and speed up, slow down, get closer, get further away, move left, move right? What is your depth perception? How good are you at being able to judge distances accurately? Another skill is our eye alignment, or our ability to aim. So are we able to keep both eyes working in tandem? And that is something that is really important moving forward too. Our peripheral vision. A lot of people talk about peripheral vision, and sometimes it is not always correct in what they are saying. Your peripheral vision is effectively made up by a series of fixations, so you can pick up what's going on from your central part of your vision or central part of your focus, but you do need to then shift your focus to be able to accurately build up your peripheral vision. And we're going to rephrase that in some ways to something called blueprints a little bit later on. So watch out for that one. And the other thing is eye tracking. So obviously, one of the main things that we have been looking at is eye tracking. It's been termed as eye tracking. That's what the technology is called. But actually, there is a visual skill called eye tracking. And that's our ability to be able to track objects, track scenarios, track things in our environment as they go through. Now, here is a video for you to have a watch of from the eye tracker that will give you an insight into all of these core visual skills.
Go! Go! Okay.
Now, I said that emotions play a big part in our decision-making process. We all go through what's known as the stress response. And put simply, that is, we see something going on, we are given a stimulus, we see different things going on, we appraise that situation, otherwise we kind of analyze that situation, and then based on our appraisal of that situation, we either have a stress response or we have a no stress response. Now, that appraisal typically orientates around the fact of, do we hold that situation to be something we care about? And do we have the skills in order to deal with that situation? So if we deem ourselves not to have the skills to be able to deal with that situation, that is a place where we are likely to become stressed. And that becomes a problem because that directly affects what's called the prefrontal cortex or prefrontal lobe, depending on what part of the pond you're from, in our brain. Now that is the decision-making center of the brain. And it is typically where most of our decisions, if not all of our decisions, are made. Now, if us being stressed, emotional, over-aroused, too anxious has an effect on this part, for all pretensive purposes, this emotional state starts to shrink this part of the brain. Now think about, in the same context, if I started to shrink your biceps or your quads or your hamstrings when you went to do the respective exercises. So if I shrunk your quads when we were doing some squats, what happens to your ability to be able to do those squats? The same concept happens here. If I shrink that part of the brain, your ability to make decisions all of a sudden becomes hindered. And this emotional state, if we become stressed and we don't have any coping mechanisms for it, can last up to 20 seconds. Now think about how many things can happen in 20 seconds during a game of ice hockey. It's a lifetime in some ways. So many things can happen in that time. So it's really important that we acknowledge emotions play a factor in decision making, but also it's really important that we come up with strategies in order to deal with these stressful situations, because ultimately they are going to happen. Whether that be there's a high impact collision, there's a cross check to the head, there's a really bad boarding call, or it's a really big crowd. That can all cause a stress response. So it's something we need to acknowledge and move forward with and try and assist. I can say that emotions are having an impact, and I can say that they are really important to consider. But this is a sports vision project, so what does emotions have to do with our eyesight and vision? Actually, a lot. Because when we become stressed, typically what happens is our pupils start to dilate, and we start to have in some ways what's called the fight or flight system. It's meant to assist us. But unfortunately, as we've developed as a race, it's not always the case. And ultimately, it comes down to us not being able to what's called emotionally regulate. And that can actually have a real bad impact on our visual system. So what typically happens is that our field of vision starts to become much, much narrower. So as we become more stressed, as we become more aroused, as we become more anxious, our field of vision becomes narrower. And what happens there is that means that we are starting to not take in the relevant pieces of information that we need. And that becomes a big problem, because if you are stressed, emotional, over-aroused, that becomes a problem from the sensor point of that you can't take in all of the information that you need. It becomes too narrow. Why is that a problem within officiating? If you're not taking in the right information, how can you possibly make the right decisions? Put simply, decision making, in order to be effective at it, you need information. And upwards of 80 to 90%, as I've already said, comes through the visual system. We need to look after it. We need to understand it. So here's an example of how emotions can affect an official on the ice. So we have this incident where the official is roughly on the halfway line, and he is looking on the far side of the rink, and he doesn't anticipate that the play is about to break. The play breaks, and all of a sudden he's in a really, really bad position from what's going on. And then after that, he gets himself in another bad position, followed by another bad position. And you can see from the marker on the screen, which is where his eyes are looking, you can see how that is beginning to become really, really rapid. And that becomes a problem too, which I'll explain a little bit later. But this is a classic case of someone becoming rather emotional, becoming quite stressed, because of a situation that they could have read a little bit better, okay? So this is something to consider moving forward. There's also an example here of an official getting so fixated on one incident that's happening around the net that actually he doesn't see players coming in off the bench to start to get involved with the scrum that's happening on the ice here. So this is a classic case of he's still emotional from being in the wrong position. This happened directly afterwards, and he's so narrow-minded, so fixated on what's going on in front of him, he doesn't see this other relevant piece of information coming on the right on his side. Final bit of theory before we go into what we've found so far within the project is that we need to differentiate the difference between attention and concentration, because they are talked in the same breath, but actually they are two distinctive things. Our attention is our ability to be able to focus on different pieces of information and select those pieces of information that we need. So we attend to different pieces of information. Our concentration, though, is our ability to focus solely on a piece of information for a given period of time and as long as we need to. Now, I've got two classic examples here, or two really good examples to show these two things in action. First off, we've got attention.
Thank you so much, Lee, for sharing a little bit of the insights in one of the larger development projects that the IIHF has had over the past couple of seasons when it comes to officiating. My name is Joel Henson. I'm the IIHF Officiating Development Manager. And this is one of many examples on how the IIHF is working with education development of game officials and officiating as a whole. Seeing this and looking into some of the key aspects of being a really good game official, making decisions, really showcase how hard it could be to be a game official on the ice. But it also showcases the importance of officiating programs, both on an international level, but also on a national, local, and regional level, how important it is to develop and to work with our programs from all aspects, since it's such a complex role and position. So what we wanted to follow up here on one of the projects that we're doing and the insights that Lee was given was to share a little bit on the work that IIHF has done here in the past season and seasons around officiating, where when I see on the participant list here on our Zoom call, but also watching in, for example, on our YouTube channel, that the IIHF does a lot more, both in our own, so to say, projects that are really affecting the IIHF everyday work, where obviously one of our larger domains of work is around our tournaments and championship, as we have so many tournaments and championships within the IIHF that also needs a lot of game officials. On a yearly basis, we're roughly licensing 800 game officials, which is an total of game officials that is well above average of an M&A around the world. So we are involving a lot of game officials in our tournaments, but also given the size of the global perspective, how we try to support the federations and our members in different initiatives and projects that is not only helping the IIHF to get good game officials for our competition for a long-term perspective, but also from a short-term perspective, help and support the everyday work of the people and the organizations working with officiating in our membership. So what is really the goal then of the IIHF officiating program? Well, if I look on our role within the office, it's obviously very easy to connect back to that we would like to have a very strong product in the sense of our IHF events and our championship. We know that our championships play a very important role in many member federations' national team structure. And the national team structure is one of the key factors for having fundings and support within the entire federation. So the better the IHF events and the World Championships will be, the more attractive the national team products will be for our members. We also know from the aspect of integrity and ethical questions that our program needs to be really strong, as a lot of our championships and event is also under the loop for betting. And with betting, there will also be challenges and some negative opportunities to affect the game and outcomes of the game. So a strong officiating program with a good education and with a good introduction part for the game officials on this topic is a key. But we only control a little bit of that kind of flow and everyday work for the officiating infrastructure or ecosystem, one might call it. The preparation comes from within the structure. It comes 99% from the home structure within the leagues and the federation work that is done in their home country. We only take over for a very small part and for a few hours every season and a couple of weeks throughout each of the tournament. But the day-to-day business is happening back home in the federation. So as much as we want to prepare both on-site and a little bit before a championship, we also know that we need to support with initiatives that are strengthening the organizations back home in the M&As, but also where they can have guidance and support to make a stronger officiating structure domestically to deliver and to give the IHF good game officials for our championship. And this is not only what we see for the short term. So we know now, for example, a couple of names that are on the short list for both the male and the female group to the Olympics. Obviously, we need the help from the leagues and the M&As to prepare these individuals to get ready for the Milano Olympics. But on the other side, we also know that we have major events 2030, 2034 and beyond, where we need to support and make sure that we are also helping the members to give us good game officials and give the IHF an opportunity to have the best game officials in the world coming from the domestic domains and the domestic ecosystems when it comes to educating and developing game officials. And one piece of that is to innovate and develop within officiating. The project that we have done with Lee about decision making could be broken down into several layers. Obviously, we have a huge impact on the game officials that are involved at the tournament. They get a lot of information, they get a lot of important feedback around their scanning patterns and how they work, so that they can make a change from game to game and tournament to tournament. But it also gives us valuable insights when we're now developing the educational framework for game officials, and where we can start to break down the different components on how do we educate game officials in the future in the topic of decision making. This is something that the IHF might not utilize in their own education program, but we know that we can lead this process and be a little bit in the forefront to support our members that maybe for time reasons or infrastructure or financial reasons, they might not have the time and the opportunity to research or to go into depth about topics like this. So this is where we really try to not only innovate and develop within our own championship structure and everyday life in the IHF, but also give that back and cooperate and work together with the M&As and with the leagues within the officiating programs. So what are then some of those current projects that if you are watching this being maybe involved within the officiating community back home, or maybe you're involved in the hockey community in general and see some of the projects that are rolling out in your M&As where the IHF could be a part of those projects? Well, obviously one of the bigger ones is around the decision making. This is not something that we did now for the first time. We have done this before for the World Men's 18, the World Men's 20, for the last couple of seasons, and now we did it for the first time with the under 18 women's. We also have a long-term project together with our game officials selected for the World Men's 1A, where we start to analyze and find out the differences in decision making and the processes around making the calls on the ice, if they become any different, if we are engaging in more targeted training and education towards the different mechanics in decision making that Lee was talking about in his video. And our hope is that the positive learnings and the outcomes from this will be brought into the updated game official education framework, where we will bring in the education structure as kind of a blueprint that M&As could use to implement within their own national associations and when they are educating game officials on different level, and hopefully be able to add on the piece of decision making in their entire education program. Besides that, we're rolling out our education initiatives that is targeting the lower parts of the IIHF officiating group, the so-called C licenses, where we are taking the best peers in the business, the best game officials we have today, where they share their learnings, when they share their insights on very important topics, and we collect that in our webinar series that is called From Good to Great. This is also an opportunity for the IIHF to contribute to the global education, where we bring in the knowledge from our events and our tournaments and the male and females that are doing a fantastic job on our championships, and how they can spread their knowledge and their learning throughout our entire membership. Maybe some nations might not have that successful game officials back home, but that should not stop them from getting access to this sharing and that knowledge from within the IIHF community. We are also starting to look into the development of officiating coaches. Just as the IIHF is working with implementing the coaching framework for player coaches, we're looking into a future development of also that similar framework for coaches that works with game officials. Just as the players, the game officials are extremely benefited about having a well-educated and a good coach connected to the games that they are doing. This looks maybe a little bit different than the players' coaches, but a lot of the key components is the same. This is also an opportunity where the IIHF has their own coaching group coming from different countries, and where we can share a framework and a support mechanism with different types of education seminars, etc., to spread that knowledge and that understanding of coaching into this specific target group of game officials around the world, and not only to the coaches going to the IIHF championships. And as I already mentioned, one of the larger documents that are now in the making is to outline a kind of an international standard around education for game officials, where we have had now within our membership 84 very, very willing and interested federations on educating game officials, but where everyone has done it a little bit differently and maybe not as structured as they themselves have wished, or from the IIHF side have wished, to make sure that we have the best possible end product. If that's in the home environment or if that is in the IIHF environment, we should all be able to provide them with the educational opportunities that are at the highest possible standard for that M&A or within that competition level for the IIHF. So this is just a little bit of a quick overview of some of the current projects that are going on within the IIHF. And I really want to push that in, that when we work with different types of activities and with different types of education or with different type of development projects, it's really coming down to what does it take to be a really good game official. And this is something that I find super interesting, that it's very universal, whether we talk about educating organizational leaders, officiating coaches, players coaches, if it's staff members around a team, etc. It's not only about the theory, and it's not only about the task in itself. It has so many other components. And for the officials, then it's really to bring out the mindset that being a good game official is more than just the rules. For the ones watching this webinar today, I think if you think about a game official that you have encountered that was really, really good, maybe say the best game official you have ever seen or had in a game, I think that pretty quickly, one of the things that are popping up is that you're not connecting them, maybe that they were the best ones in the rules. Maybe you identified that there were some other things that they did really good, That was maybe how they interacted with you, with other players, how they were skating, or how they were kind of communicating. A lot of the other things that are maybe not the first thing we jump into when we think about what makes a good game official. But when we start to dig into it, it's actually maybe, and it's very harsh to say, maybe the rules is not the most important thing. It's about how we manage and lead the game. Obviously, we need to know the rules, but no matter how good the rules are, if we are not able to implement them or to lead the game in a good way, then that rule knowledge is just not so, it's not just worth that much as a game official. So whenever we work with the different projects, we try to break it down to the opportunity to develop and educate within different skill sets. It could be the professional skills, as I just mentioned, with, for example, skating. Lee showed an example on decision making, and making the right call is actually breaking down to a professional skill that we can train, that we can observe, that we can change, and that we actually can develop as people, as persons. Then we also have the other skill sets that, as I mentioned earlier, when you think about that game official that was maybe the best one you ever had, that person was most likely very good with their interpersonal skills, how they interacted with others, how they worked with their colleagues, how they were getting that context really in their grip and leading that group in a good way. And those people were most likely also very good at their intrapersonal skills, reflecting about their own behaviors, about their own actions, their own performance, and being able to utilize that and implement that in developing maybe sometimes some of the professional skills. And when we are looking on all these different types of skill sets, and what we want to push out there is that for a game official, regardless if they are in a domestic level in Sweden, Canada, Croatia, China, wherever it could be, it's that we utilize the international standard to provide the best types of examples, or the know-how, or the best examples to work within this area, to make sure that the game officials can be the best that they can be. That's always our goal. It's not to push everyone up to a similar level, or that everyone should have the dream and the goal to be an IIHF game official. The joint dream and the joint vision we want to provide and create is that everyone that comes in a program, whether it's in the IIHF or in the domestic program, is that we can provide to them education, support, and planning so that they can be the best that they can be. Could be on youth level, on professional level, amateur level, really bring them up to their full potential, which they have ambitions to strive for. So this is also one thing that is really, really, for me, interesting, and that we talk about the same thing when we are developing people in general, if it's in business or if it's in ice hockey, if it's as a coach, officiating coach, or game official, we come back to identifying some of the same skill sets and how we make them into actual behaviors that we work with, and that we take them on their individual journey. Not everyone is molded in the same mold, formed in the same mold. They're actually having their own individual ambitions and journeys as a game official as well. So what is then one key message when we spread this out and when we try to work with our members that you might be a part of? Well, we want to have as many as possible for as long time as possible. So if we can get a lot of people in, we can get this as really a commitment, something that they are engaged to be a part of, and they are within the officiating family for a long time, developing their skills, reaching their ambitions, then we know that we will have a good end product. And for me, the important thing, especially with officiating, when we talk about many, we talk about as possible and what is possible. When we have, for example, player recruitment, then you can have limitations such as ice, or you can have other limitations to figure out that how many can we have. But when it comes to officiating, we can really calculate in a easy way how many game officials do we need. And we know, seen from different countries, that if we have too many game officials, then we don't have enough opportunities to be in games and be on the ice, minimizing the chance for development. That creates an environment where you don't feel really seen or heard or have an opportunity, and it's easy that you lose interest and do something else. The same come if we have not enough game officials. Then we come into an environment where people have to do a lot of games. They lose some of the free time, preparation time, recovery time. And after a while, they start to lose interest and they feel that they are not really appreciated or seen, or that the time might be worth spending within officiating. So it's really important in all parts of organizations to define what is the possible at our level. What is the need and what is kind of the gray area where we have to have a little bit of a buffer in case someone gets injured or we're having games at the same time, etc. But we cannot have too many game officials, which sounds maybe for some M&As as a lucky thing because they are on the opposite. They are lacking game officials and they are not enough. What I would like to send along in this meeting to everyone watching, regardless what they have in their roles, their part, is that a lot of the times, and it's so easy that this happens, and sometimes it's not even on purpose, it's just that we are specializing on different things, and we end up in a little bit of the silos that we do our own thing and not really caring about what someone else are doing because we don't really have time. This happens very easily in a federation or in a club where we tend to look into what kind of environment or what kind of activities do we do for our clubs, for our coaches, for the federation in general. And then the officiating ends up a little bit on the side. Could be good when you look on delegating and giving people responsibility and mandates. That could be a good thing that you trust, that you take care of your thing, that you're not micromanaging in that aspect. But at the same time, there's such a lack of exchange and opportunities when we're separating these two things. Mainly because officiating in itself is really an integrated part of a club or a federation. This is where the majority, if not everyone, comes from when they have played or they have had an interest to play, then they become game officials. So from a recruitment perspective, we know that the majority of the people that will want to be game officials, they come from the club and the federation environment. We also know that if a club or a federation work very closely with the officiating organization, they can outline the implementation of the rules. And when we have a good implementation of the rules, we also have a really good developing environment for players, coaches, and of course also for officiating. If we have a good developing environment, good game environment, that means that we will have a high interest in our games. So this is really something that is positive, that we work together and that we put everything within one environment. And I would like to talk about that as being the hockey environment. This is the synergy effect that we can have, and it needs, of course, a lot of coordination. But to have the hockey in the center and to gather all the different pieces around this and to add the officiating part as well will create synergy effects, regardless if you're the largest M&A within the IIHF or one of the smaller ones. To add all the components around the same topic and goals will not only create an inclusion for the ones that are working with the structure and the leading of the officiating programs, but will also create an acceptance. It's very classical, and to do a very personal sharing, that when we talk about rules, it's easy to give the task of updating and implementing the rules only to officiating. To say that you guys and girls, you know the best way how the rules work, that's a part of your job, just implement them and that will be fine. But for me, this is something that goes hand in hand with every part that you see in this picture, that everyone cooperate, and then the officiating can take one part of that and talk about the challenges as an individual, and as we saw on Lee's presentation, to keep up with the player to see what happened and to implement these playing rules and create a safe environment. But the whole structure and the aim, what is the purpose of the rules? Why would we like to change, or why would we like to implement that? Why would we like to be stricter and maybe fouls to the head or restraining fouls? It's not an officiating decision, it's a hockey decision. And it's something that an M&A or a club or a district or a region need to gather around to be able to work together. If the federation says that, hey, we would like to have less concussions, have a safer environment where players stays longer, it's very good to inform players, give the education material to the clubs, instruct the fans or parents, integrate that in the national team program, have that in the coaches' education. But if you're not adding this instruction or this will or this direction to the officiating community, then it's extremely hard to implement that. On the same side, it's very tough if the officiating community comes and say, hey, this season we are really watching the restraining fouls, and the players and the clubs and the coaches are not properly informed, educated, and followed up. Then they will come out and the game officials knows everything about it, but the participants, they have no clue. And also leading up to the stands where the fans and the parents are watching, they're also clueless on what happens. So in the hockey environment and the development of the hockey environment, it is so important that all these aspects, all these kind of pieces in the puzzles are all connected to go towards the joint development. And with that, we need to be able to create two thoughts in our mind at the same time. And I think that this is also relatable a lot to the coaches part, to the players part. And I really want to send that along to anyone who works within the local hockey community. When someone is starting to play hockey, it means some sort of investment, whether it's a parent investing in skates, whether it's a club investing in ice time, a coach investing in their free time or paid time to work with that individual. So that means that if at some point a boy or a girl or someone starts playing hockey, comes to an end in their playing career, and we're not able to offer them other opportunities, so while they're playing, offer them more opportunities, it is a lost investment, maybe from a club, from a parent, or from hockey in general. So for the officiating side and for us to develop together with the M&As is better pathways where we can get people engaged, get them involved when they feel that, hey, now my current investment, my current involvement as a player or whatever role it might be is starting to fade out and I would like to do something else. Maybe they don't know that they're having these opportunities, and we need to communicate that and clearly outline what opportunities there is. So as a part of our structure now for the education part, I would really like to highlight that we're creating two types of pathways. One is what we call the participation pathway, where we feel that it's a really, really good opportunity where an individual can play an important part in the larger ice hockey community, where they can connect with other people that are also passionate about ice hockey, supporting the local junior, senior, or youth environment, being a part of that everyday business that is bringing them joy, maybe not financially or in a profession, but from being on the ice in the world's best sport. But at the same time, a federation, just as with players or with coaches, need also to have this performance pathway, where we can create an attractive product and a competitive environment for the game officials as well, where we can create opportunities to go from a domestic environment to maybe an international environment, and where we know that if someone is doing youth hockey for a longer period of time, they don't need those kind of skill sets or that commitment in the same way as someone that is really engaged and wanting to be an international or professional game official in the future. So if you are engaged in some way or form in the local officiating community, the national officiating community, or in the hockey community in general, I really think that this could be a good reflection to look in what are you offering in your federation? What are you offering in your community? Is it clear enough that you can be a part of this without having ambitions to be an elite or an IIHF game official? Is it also clear enough for the individuals that really has the ambition to become maybe the best game official in the world? What kind of steps and what pathway do you have within your community to bring out their ambition and making them the best game officials that they can be, whether it's on participation level or a performance pathway? And I think regardless what we can produce and regardless the size, and knowing some of the M&As that are able to have this as a true career pathway where you can become professional, you can still have a lot of selling points and really a lot of interesting aspects that someone can gain or someone can actually get from these pathways, regardless if it's on the performance side or the participation side. I would really like to highlight the social aspect, building that community, or for some, maintaining that hockey community that they might have when they were playing in the teams. The physical activity to get moving, for some to continue towards maybe an elite athlete ability and activity, or for someone that is just happy to get moving and use sport as kind of staying healthy and staying active. Officiating could be a great opportunity for that as well. And not to forget the developing aspect of making decision, leadership, and communication, where you as an individual can learn a lot about yourself and how you are working in different environments and with different people in the role of being a game official. So again, the IIHF cannot do everything from the office perspective or from our committee perspective. This is really where we try to outline the bigger pictures and working together with our members, coordinating and combining the joint forces, ambitions, and skills that we see around the world and create the best opportunity that is serving as many people as possible within the ice hockey community globally. So with that, thank you so much for listening to both myself and sharing from the officiating community and the work the IIHF is doing, and also for listening to Lee and his work that he is up to when it comes to the decision making and the eye tracking that we have done here. So Marco, I leave it over to you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Let me share my screen as well. See how it goes. I tried the new method. How does it look? So thank you again, Joel, for sharing what we are doing as the IIHF with the game officials, and really interesting to hear all the things that we are doing together with the federations as well as together on the World Championships. And with this, I would like to conclude our part with the webinar that we have today. And I want everybody to again remember that all our webinars are recorded, so you can come back to them, you can check them out, and you can see what was done already before. You can listen maybe to some interesting that might be interesting for you as well. So here you can scan the QR code, or you can go to our web page and find it on our web page as well. And and again, excuse me. As said before, we are running our webinars last Wednesday of each month. So next month we will talk about the high performance programming. So there we will have a guest speaker who is partly working with the Swiss Ice Hockey Federation and partly working with the Swiss club as well. And he's head of performance as well as the senior manager of the athletics. So Simon will be join us next webinar, and he will be talking about setting up the high performance environment inside the club and inside federation, as well as how programming works in those, we call them investment years of the player pathway. So between 14 years and 18 years age, before you are some of the players become professionals. But how does this high performance, these investment years, how do you work in order if you want to reach those goals? And with this again, you can contact me directly if you want to receive for the next Skill4All webinar. If you want to receive the email from myself directly, you can send me an email, or scan this QR code and then send me an email, and then I'll put you on the email list. And again, for everybody who is listening us on the YouTube, you're more than welcome to join us still on Zoom, because in few seconds we will stop our live stream and we will stop recording, and then we will stay inside the Zoom meeting to have a discussion. And I already received a couple questions for Joel, and maybe there will be some more to come. So thank you again, everybody, for joining. And everybody who's on YouTube, see you on the next webinar. everybody who is in Zoom, please stay and we can have a discussion on.